What inspires change? What motivates us? It's what's inside that moves us. What moves you? Get the Scion story at Scion.com.
Senator Chris Duenas has introduced Bill 187, which uses $9 million out of GovGuam's $15 million windfall of Section 30 money to pay out tax refunds.
I'd like to see this bill get heard. I understand there is a session coming up on Monday. I haven't seen the rules meeting yet scheduled, but in that case, I don't see any reason why if we had a public hearing on this, we couldn't have this in this session, and possibly even, there's cash in the bank, so there's no reason why we couldn't get those refunds out in this month.
Senator Duenas confirms that the $9 million would be used during this current fiscal year and not the upcoming 2014 fiscal year. This is something that Democrat Senator Roy Respicio has questioned, considering that the governor has said that there is a surplus for this fiscal year.
If there's supposed to be a surplus for this fiscal year, what is the extra cash needed for to pay out tax refunds?
Well, like I said, you could battle back and forth in terms of what's in what fiscal year. I think what is important is, and this is where I think you see a lot of times from the governor's office and from this Republican minority, we constantly talk about cash. What's cash in the bank? We could say that we're closing the fiscal year, and this is how it's tracking, and this is what it's going to end up being in terms of when they close the books and DOA gives a report of how the fiscal year went. But if you have cash in the bank, you spend out what you have in cash. But if we had cash in the bank, we need to give it to the people when we have that cash in the bank. I think that's what's more important than anything else.
This is exactly what Senator Ben Pangilinan is proposing, but he's proposing giving out tax rebates because he says that GovGuam has enough money to pay out all tax refunds and can now begin paying out tax rebates on top of the refunds. The senator issued a statement to PNC saying, "The Guam legislature has already provided, as the governor has mentioned, more than enough money for income tax refunds." He goes on to state that he believes the unanticipated Section 30 funds of $15.45 million should be spent on a tax rebate program for Guam taxpayers. He says, with this financial windfall, it should now go to the private sector workers and all taxpayers with the payment of a tax rebate instead of increasing government operating costs. Senator Pangilinan is also proposing using this money for the hospital, or a combination of both tax rebates and funding for the hospital.
I haven't seen a bill. Those concepts are very interesting. I think what's important is we've introduced legislation. My colleagues have also introduced legislation for public safety and for education. So I think we should, be cooperative with one another and hear the bills that are before us. And perhaps in the future, if there's money for those type of programs, do it. But for right now, this is cash in the bank, and I want to thank my colleagues for introducing legislation to get this money to the people's hands as soon as possible.